Hi, everybody. The book I have today is called The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman. There's an art page and our front cover, our back cover, and our spine. We have an art page on this book and our title page. The Best Nest. Written and illustrated by P.D. Eastman. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world my nest is best. Does Mrs. Bird look very happy? I don't think so. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. Aw. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it. Let's look for a new place right now. She's pretty bossy. And he looks pretty shocked. Wow. So they left the old place to look for a new place. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. In the little tree. What do you think? But somebody else had already moved in. Ooh, a raccoon. He looks pretty angry. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. What is it? A shoe? Can a bird live in a shoe? I don't know. Let's find out. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they looked on. They went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. I always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. What do you think? You think that's going to work out for them? Let's find out. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. That was the mailbox. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. They flew into that little space. Do you think it's going to work out for them? I don't know. Let's find out. They flew in and looked around. It isn't too big, asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. So they got busy. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. And they got some soda straws and some broom straws. And they got some sweater string. Look at them. They look pretty shocked that those birds have taken their stuff. We have some pretty bold birds here that like to steal our lunch, huh? They got some stocking string and some mattress stuffing. What an interesting nest they're making. And some horsehair and some man hair. Horse doesn't look very happy. They stole his hair. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, and all the horsehair and the man hair they could carry. And they took it back to build their nest. It's a lot of stuff. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really best, said Mrs. Bird, and I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of the house and sang his song again. I love our house, I love our nest, in all the world our nest is the best. He was so busy singing, he didn't see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up to the bird's nest. Uh-oh. The rope rang the bell right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Bird looks shocked out of her mind. She can't believe it. Look at her. Ah! Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay, string, stuffing, horsehair, manhair, and straws. But where was Mrs. Bird? Oh no, Mrs. Bird, where did you go? Poor Mr. Bird. I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low, he looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. He looked down into a chimney, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. He looked into a water barrel, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Then he saw a fat cat. There was a big smile on that fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. Oh dear, he cried. This big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird. Oh my goodness. Poor Mr. Bird. He's forever sad now. Mr. Bird flew off. I'll never see Mrs. Bird again, he cried. It's getting dark, and it began to rain, and it rained harder and harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crying bird. Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house. That old house Mrs. Bird hated. I'll go inside, said Mr. Bird. I'll rest here until the rain stops. And to his surprise, when Mr. Bird went in, there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing, I love my house, I love my nest in all the world. This nest is the best. He couldn't believe it. She was so happy. You're here. I thought you hated this old nest. Mrs. Bird smiled. I used to hate it, she said, but a mother bird can change her mind, you see. There's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird. And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. The end. Bye, everybody. Mwah.